So this is an analysis of Kubrick's work being done by a YouTuber. He's talking about the J.K., I think Chester, or however you pronounce his name, was analysis of Charles Dickens' work, which was basically, he's making a statement about injustice and how, in most cases, it should be distressing, but then it is kind of turned into absurdity. And then in a way, it's less for tears and then more for almost laughter. And he's talking about how Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick, the director, in a way kind of analyzed evil. Some of his evil characters were to be laughed with, and then some of the evil characters were to be laughed at. And the two leads in Lolita, which would be Peter Sellers playing the television writer, and takes advantage of Lolita, who is the underage woman. And then there's also the protagonist, who we laugh at, who also falls, I guess, deeply in love with her. And so we have to choose a side. At one side, we're laughing with, and the other side, we're laughing at. In many Peter Sellers movies, you laugh with him, rather than at him, because he has a certain aspect of wit. But what this is a moment within the analysis where he brings upon Dante's Inferno, Algaro's poem, also known as the Divine Comedy. It's strange that it is also called the Divine Comedy, which has a map for hell and all the canons. And this one I have not seen. That's why if you've seen some of my other posts about the Divine Comedy, which I've read a big chunk of it in college and studied it, the devil in this version right here is not exactly how our gallery describes him, but he does mention the three faces. And in this one, this is another artist's interpretation of Algaro, which is not exactly correct. Because in this one, they're not really three faces. There's the one form of the devil, and there's the two characters. So you have, I don't remember right or left on it, but I know one of them is Cassius, and one of them is Brutus, I believe. And then the one that's being eaten with his head going inside the mouth of the devil is Judus. I believe that's correct. I may be wrong about yeah, because et brute, you too, Brutus, is what he says in Shakespeare's Caesar. And Cassius committed a crime against the government, or what would be known as treason. So he would be over here, probably. Brutus committed the crime betraying brother or family, as in when he says ute brute. That's the other image over here. So there are two characters in a Shakespeare play and Caesar. The one here is Cassius, probably. But you notice the artist has him facing upward, looking upward towards the heavens. So it could be that may be Brutus, betraying family, looking upward. And then you see here looking downward into the pit, maybe betraying government, which would be Cassius. I don't know. I'd have to study this painting. I haven't seen it. I don't know who painted it. But it's not the only version I've seen of Lucifer in Dante's Inferno. Now, the one in the center, who you can only see his legs, that's correct. That's correctly described from Algaro in the poem. That's Judas Iscariot, because he betrayed God, so he's not seen or his face is not seen. His face is being eaten, or his head is being eaten, so he's put into the mouth first and foremost. Now, another description of the devil in Dante's Inferno is that he has 3 faces. So he has a face coming out of the side, and then a face coming out of this way. And the 2 faces, well, actually, the 3 faces are actually eating. But if you look a little bit closer here, you see that that looks like a mouth. So this may be a proper description. You see that that looks like a mouth there, eating Cassius or Brutus, and they're eating Cassius or Brutus. I don't know if this is Cassius or if this is Brutus or this is Brutus or Cassius, but that would be Judas, or Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot is how he's described. Because you cannot see his face, he's not identified. He's going inside the mouth. And in many cases, the devil is not identified. And this painting he is, you can see him because you're seeing through the point of view of Virgil, who's protected by a bubble. So he's looking at him. In many cases, he's more like Judas Iscariot, where you can't see his identity. He's not shown. But this is a very interesting aspect. The one thing that differs from Dante's Inferno are the wings. You can see the gargoyles and all these demons, and that's his legion. Some of them look kind of monkeyish. You can see also here a Roman character, too, like a Roman character. You can see these are being punished. These souls are being punished in a heated kind of vast or some kind of pot. You can see things going on here. And then there's a demon climbing up here, kind of blowing on the fire to get the fire to, you can see the air coming out here, his mouth, and he's blowing on the fire to keep the fire stoked, as they say. This fire looks very flower-like, too. In this version here, you see he's holding 2 other political characters. So the painter has gone forward and advanced probably what Alghero was talking about, but he's also in a pot picking up these characters and then consuming them in his 3 mouths. So 1, 2, and 3. But you can see they're waiting to be dumped in to the pot, and the pot is stirring. Now, this is incorrect on how Alghero describes him, because at this point in hell, it's actually very, very cold. So there would be no fire. So this is a misinterpretation of Alghero's poem. If this is Dante's Inferno, which it may be based on it, loosely based on it, so it's probably not. Even though I'm pretty sure if I did research and found out this particular painting, I would probably say that it is related to Dante's Inferno, which is Alghero's poem about hell, which I have. I've read some of it. You can see. Now remember, Alghero was not following the principles of a novel. So it's not a novel. If anyone says that it is not. It's a poem. So it's a very lengthy poem. It does not follow the rules of a novel, so it's very difficult to read. But it does stick to Virgil the entire time, who is sent to observe it only and not to be touched by hell. He's protected. The observer is. Now, the reason I was interested in this is only because it differs, or it goes away from Alghero's description, because there is fire and not ice. Because in Alghero's description, none of this would be here. There wouldn't be fires being stoked. So he's kind of showing parts of hell, and he's combining different parts of the story with the final climax of the poem, which happens when he finally gets to this is the 9th canon of the lowest part of hell. It's the like the 9th level. Okay, so if you read Algero, he talks about the devil being in a pond, almost like a pond. It's like an icy pond, so it's frozen ice. He is waist deep in something here, but this looks like a vat for cooking. So the artist is taking his own interpretation, but it's not at all. It's actually frozen, okay? Because he has wings. And in this version, I don't see wings. I do see winged creatures, which are gargles, or demons, right? That are sitting alongside of the pot. But I do not see wings. So he's taking his own right in art and saying, okay, this one. But there's also something here coming out of his ears, and it makes him almost fish-like, which makes me think if he's combining the version of the devil with John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, where Apollyon actually is somewhat scale-like and has sea creature features. So like a fish, you can see there's scales here. So this is obviously an interpretation and a combining of a different devil than Algero. Because Algero, this would be all cold, and he'd be frozen waist. He'd be frozen in a pond waist high. And he'd be beating his wings, right? So his wings would be beating, causing the air, okay? Causing the air within that level of hell to cool. The rest of the rest of hell. Because it's designed, he's almost like an air conditioner. This is obviously heating, so he's taking another side because we see the fire. And Algero's, if you look at the end of it, he's talking about cooling hell. By beating his wings, he freezes himself more solid in this pond. So this is not the exact version. And he cannot escape because he is trying to escape. So the devil is freezing himself more solid in a frozen pond by trying to escape and using his wings, beating his wings and causing it to freeze more solid. And also recirculating this cool air throughout different parts of hell to cool his victims or whatever. Algero was definitely by far probably the most genius poet of all times, probably by far, because of his propheticness. He was a prophet nearly. And this is a very, very interesting take on everything. If you look at this right here, you see an angel here. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. I said Virgil. Virgil's the angel. I'm sorry. Dante is the one that's protected by a bubble. But Virgil's also protected too. He's protected by heaven. But Virgil is with Dante, is what I had to look at this one to realize I was making a mistake. Virgil is protected, but he's protected because he has the great power of heaven. And Dante is protected because Virgil puts him in this bubble to go through the Divine Comedy, or what is known as hell. It's also interesting that he calls it Divine Comedy. But if you look at the very end of it, you'll have to read the end of it to see the description that it's not exactly like this painting, but it is similar. And I see those paintings, I stop immediately because there's many of them. There's many interpretations. I don't know if there's modern day ones. I would like to see more of that. I'm sure there probably is. I have one myself that I've painted that is kind of a modern day interpretation of Dante Inferno called Hell Faces. I think it's also called, I have one also called Hell Cup, and I think it's called Vanity Faces. But it's nothing this brilliant though. This stuff, when I see this, I start to vlog. I'd like to go to some museums. I have been to Paris, and I've been to the Louvre, I've been underneath, and I've seen some of these amazing paintings. They are in France. There are some in France and in other places too. And there's all of this stuff is amazing. This stuff here, you can see something going on here. This could be a whole thesis paper here. This little scene that's going on in one little moment. And this stuff too. This almost looks like maybe gold or something, you know, some type of valuable metal that's being burned. This is probably something tied with maybe gluttony or something similar, where his intestines are coming out of a vital part of him here. Or actually, if you really look at it, that's not what's happening. That's what kind of looks like what's happening, but it's not. This is like a fulcrum that he's pouring this hot liquid. I thought it was connected to this, but it's actually not. He's pouring hot liquid into this guy's mouth. And then there's a demon pouring something here that's probably he's using to pour it in here, that might have to do with riches. This could be melted gold or something similar to it. It could be something like that. Maybe some kind of metal that's precious, like some type of precious metal. And this looks like maybe gold too, being poured into this pot. And these are certainly victims of hell that are in like a jacuzzi almost, you know, and there's some kind of lust things going on. But each part of hell represents the sin that the person mostly committed. Algero is, I think, probably maybe closer to Catholic side of thinking of theology and hell than the Protestant, but yet there's both. It mixes with both. But these souls are to spend, you know, the rest of their lives, you know, or the rest of, because we're all immortal, you know, according to C.S. Lewis, we're all immortal beings. And this is a form of punishment that can go on. Now, according also to the New Testament, Jesus Christ can actually pull you out of this type of hell. It even says that if you make your bed in hell, he'll be there with you. There's also a winged creature here too that you can't see all of. This is just something that was off of YouTube. There's a snake wrapping around this man's neck here, the serpent, pulling him into part of the painting. I really would like to know who did this painting. Probably the person is no longer around. This is very, very old. This is probably about the same time the poem was written. I'm thinking maybe Dark Ages, maybe Middle Ages. I don't think Renaissance, but it could be, because of the fact that it's a reinterpretation. In the Renaissance time, they refined things. That's why Shakespeare, it was definitely done probably after Shakespeare. This is definitely Cassius. This is definitely Brutus, and this is definitely Judus. And this is definitely talking about the Roman time. Romans mentioned, that could even be Nero, don't know. He's wearing something right here. The reason why is because the poem is in the painting, which Algero would not have been able to paint. He was a writer only, mostly a poet. But this right here is making a comment on it. So it even could be post-Shakespeare. It could even be 1600s. It could even be mid-1600s during Puritan times. I doubt it, though. I think it's older than that. It's probably coming out of, I would think, Renaissance time, or a little bit after the 1500s, maybe going into 1600s. There's also something here, too, which is a line that goes through. And I think these little demon characters are interesting. Remind me of the Wizard of Oz or something. These little bat-winged characters. and all of this. It's just very creepy. I mean, it's Friday the 13th, so I thought I'd do something. Anyway, so this will describe mostly the image that we were looking at. It talks about Judus, Brutus, and Cassius. And two of those characters were created by Shakespeare, and Judus obviously is in the living word. And Judus, obviously enough, is the image of the betrayal of God. Now, to us, with our minds dominated by Shakespeare and by democratic ideas, the presence here of Brutus and Cassius needs some explanation. To understand it, we must get rid of all political notions in the narrow sense. We should notice first that Dante's attitude to Julius Caesar is ambivalent. So, sorry, I got a nose itch. When they mention Julius here, they're talking about Caesar. Now, we look at here, personally, as a pagan, Julius is in limbo. That could have been Julius with the thing around his neck. And he's in Canto 4. So that painting that we were looking at is basically mixing the cantos. You can see the word canto right here. Those are the levels of hell. Now, it tells me here I can return to page 123 and we could read some of the poem, but I'm just doing the analyzation here. So politically, which Alighiero, in Dante's is very political. It's mostly a political thing. And politically, his rise to power involved the making of the Civil War. And Curio, who advised him to cross the Rubicon, is in the 8th circle of hell. Now, all these places have names in hell. The 8th circle is one that is actually above the 9th. We were looking at the 9th, because the 9th is where Satan is. He's in the 9th circle of hell. Here you can see Canto 2, and then the 8th. So that'd be the 8th. But, well, it's actually 2 X's is what I meant. When I said 2, I meant 2 X's here. But then there's the 5 and then the 3, which represent the 8th. But although Julius was never, well, that's actually 28, Canto 28. I guess that would be 28 is what that would be. Sorry about that. But anyway, although Julius was never actually emperor, he was a founder of the Roman Empire. And by his function, therefore, he images the institution which, in Dante's view, was divinely appointed to govern the world. Thus, Brutus and Cassius, by their breach of sworn allegiance to Caesar, were traitors. So both were actually traitors to the empire, to the world order. Consequently, just as Judas figures treason against God, so Brutus and Cassius figures treason against man and society, which is partly true. I think what the writer here is probably analyzing is that one of them definitely is a traitor to man, and one is a traitor to society, or you could say one is a traitor to brotherhood, and one is a traitor to government, as in treason. One committed crime against family, the other committed the crime against society or government. That's obviously true because they're using 2 different characters, Brutus and Cassius, just as Shakespeare did. He used 2 characters for a reason. He could have made Brutus and Cassius one character if he wanted to, but he chose 2 different to represent 2 ideals. And they definitely all represent ideals in the play of Caesar, or the tragedy of Caesar. Now, we may say or the tragedy of Julius Caesar, but we may say that we have here the images of treason against divine and secular government of the world. Now, he's saying, I don't like the way he does this, but he says images of treason against divine and the secular. Those are 2 separate things. But he's saying that in the fact that they oppose one another. One, they portray the divine, betraying God. The other betraying the secular government. I think the one probably looking downward in the painting was secular government betrayal. The one looking upward was betraying the divine. So we obviously know Brutus and Cassius, one betrayed family and one betrayed one betrayed government. But it could be that he used the other character by looking up to let them know what Judus did. They both betrayed parts of, you could say, the world. Maybe Brutus and Cassius, meaning the family is still in the world, you could say, and Cassius betraying the government, or betraying, committing treason by betraying a governmental figure like Julius Caesar, looking downward maybe in shame, and the other one looking up maybe to relatives, as in betraying the family. Because I don't think the secular government would be the same as divine. It'd be kind of the opposite. The government is always considered evil compared to heaven in a lot of cases. Now, Virgil calls him, there's Pluto being the name of the king of the classical underworld. That could be also what was going on because of remember the scales and the fish-like character. And I mentioned John Bunyan referring to the devil, or Apollyon, as something that has fishy scales. They're also referring to Pluto. But to Dante, he is Satan. So he's talking about the figure, or Lucifer, or Beelzebub, or, as we say, the devil. He can see it now, that which monotonously resents and repels, that which despairs. Milton image in Satan. Yeah, that's going to be mentioned too, because Milton has an imaged Satan too, but an active Satan. So John Milton is the one that wrote Paradise Lost. And this beyond, this is passive except for its longing. Shakespeare imagined treachery. This is treachery raised to an infinite cannibalism. And that's what this painting kind of is, in a way. The painting that we're showing, treachery gnaws treachery, and so inevitably it is the imagination of the freezing of every conception and experience of which neither life nor death can know, and which is yet quite certain if it is willed. Pretty interesting. But paintings and stuff are used in describing that scene.